heal as a team, we're going to crumble. Inch by inch, play by play, till we're finished. We're in hell right now, gentlemen, believe me. And we can stay here, get the shit kicked out of us, or we can fight our way back into the light. We can climb out of hell. 1 inch at a time. You know, when you get old in life, things get taken from you. I mean, that's part of life. But you only learn that when you start losing stuff. You find out life's this game of inches. So is football. Because in either game, life or football, the margin for error is so small. I mean, 1/2 a step too late or too early, and you don't quite make it. 1/2 second too slow, too fast, you don't quite catch it. The inches we need are everywhere around us. They're in every break of the game, every minute, every second. On this team, we fight for that inch. On this team, we tear ourselves and everyone else around us to pieces for that inch. We claw our fingernails for that inch. Because we know when we add up all those inches, that's going to make the fucking difference between winning and losing. Between living and dying. I'll tell you this, in any fight, it's the guy who's willing to die who's going to win that inch. And I know if I'm going to have any life anymore, it's because I'm still willing to fight and die for that inch. Because that's what living is. There's 6 inches in front of your face. Now I can't make you do it. You got to look at the guy next to you. Look into his eyes. Now I think you're going to see a guy who will go that inch with you. You're going to see a guy who will sacrifice himself for this team because he knows when it comes down to it, you're going to do the same for him. That's a team, gentlemen. And either we heal now as a team, or we will die as individuals.
Ideas are bulletproof.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another live edition of Down the Rabbit Hole. I am your host, Popeye, from FederalJack.com. It is a beautiful Sunday afternoon, March 11th, 2012. And today I am pleased and honored to have a special guest. This lady is one of the most amazing ladies I've ever had the pleasure of talking to or meeting, well, at least via the internet. She is responsible for helping wake me up and helping me pull my former neoconservative head out of my ass, because she was the truth that she brought to the table helped me on my path to enlightenment, and I appreciate her for that. And you've all heard me play her speeches before on air and talk about her, and I'm just super, super pleased to get her on. Let me read to you a little bit about her, and then I'm going to bring her on and introduce her. Her name is Dr. Dahlia Wasfi. She was born in New York City, New York. She spent her early childhood in Saddam Hussein's Iraq, and then she returned with her family to the United States in the late 70s. She graduated from Swarthmore College with a BA in biology and from the University of Pennsylvania School of Medicine. And in around February, March of 2004, she visited Iraq to see her family in Basra and Baghdad. And she went back there in 2006, and she's working on a book. She's got a site called liberatethis.com. She is an amazing lady. Without any further ado, let me welcome her to the show, Dr. Dahlia Wasfi. Doc, welcome to my show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me and for that really beautiful introduction. It's an honor for me to be here.
It's an honor for me to have you. You are, without a doubt, one of the strongest advocates for the citizens of Iraq. And when I think of the Iraq war and what we've done, there's not too many people out there that have the courage to do what you do. I mean, you stand up. I told you, for a little lady, you have bigger balls than most men in this country. So I really thank you for what you do. It's an honor to have you on the show. Let's get right into it. Let's start with what caused you to want to get involved and start doing what you do, and just I mean, you've done amazing speeches all over. You've spoken. I've seen you speak before Congress. So, how did you get started in this?
Thank you again for the opportunity to be here. It's a very complicated story, and it's kind of what my book is about, because it really took a huge awakening for me. As I like to describe, I used to try to be a part of the establishment, and now I'm trying to dismantle it. I think I absorbed a lot of the messages that my society was sending me, and I was born in the U.S., and except for those early few years, I've been here. So I only speak English. I'm American, and I really can't fit in anywhere else. So I absorbed those messages from my American society of materialism and capitalism too. I think just the goal was to make as much money as you could, and that money would bring me happiness. And it was really it was along that road that things were not falling into place as I hoped. I graduated from medical school and then started residency training. But the further I went on, the more miserable I was getting. And the first sort of crisis point was the build-up to the shock and awe invasion of Iraq, which brought back memories for me of the first Gulf War in 1991. And so that was sort of re-traumatizing, not in a way that the Iraqis who went through it, not like for them, who really survived incredible ordeals. I speak only psychologically and emotionally for me. And there were a few other things going wrong in my life at the time, but I ended up taking leave from my residency at that time. It's almost 10 years ago now, in September 2002. And I was really quite miserable with life in general, and money was not making me happier. The second wake-up call was the story of Rachel Corrie, who in March of 2003 was a 23-year-old college student who went to occupied Palestine. Her response to 9/11 was to find out about other peoples and other cultures. And though she was already sort of minded for humanitarian purposes, this was her first on-the-ground experience in another country. And in occupied Palestine, she was defending the home of a family whom she was staying with. They considered her like a daughter, and she considered them like her family. And in trying to protect their home from being bulldozed by Israeli soldiers, she was crushed to death by one of those bulldozers. And I was really, I was really shocked when I heard this news that this all-American, blonde, blue-eyed young woman who could have turned a blind eye to the horrors of the world and lived the American dream. She used her Western privilege to try to protect people whose only connection to her was through their humanity. But that was more than enough. And I learned that lesson from Rachel. And although I never met her, I've had the privilege of meeting her parents in the years of my activism. And she was the example who inspired me to go back and visit my family. Rachel went to see and get to know people she didn't even know, so I thought I should go see my relatives. My father is originally from Iraq. My mom was born and raised in New York. And all of my dad's relatives at the time were still in Iraq, so I went to see them. And once I spent time with them, and they were humanized to me. These are mostly relatives that I didn't remember from when I was little, or cousins who hadn't even been born until after we'd left. once I got to know them, I wanted to, like Rachel, use my Western privilege to give them a voice, because they had no voice under dictatorship, and then they had no voice under a brutal military occupation led by the United States and Great Britain. So when I came back, I really just started showing family photos. My life was still a mess, but I started to show these pictures, and I got involved. At the time I was living in Colorado. I got involved with the peace groups there. And it was all by word of mouth. One event...
Doc, I'm going to cut you off right there, because
sure.
the break is creeping up on us. I'll have you pick up right there on the other side of the break. Ladies and gentlemen, don't go anywhere. You don't want to miss the rest of this interview. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. 3 minutes. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. I'm hanging out with Dahlia Wasfi, and we got cut off by the break. So, Dahlia, you were saying in the first segment that Rachel Corrie inspired you. And again, I have to thank you, because you're the lady responsible for introducing me to Rachel Corrie's story years ago when I saw you speak about her. I believe actually it was at one of the IVAW conferences you were speaking at, one of the Winter Soldier hearings, and you had mentioned her, and you had kind of mentioned how, she inspired you, and you had spoke so passionately about her. I was like, well, who is this girl? And then I went and researched who Rachel Corrie was, and her story is very... it's tragic, but at the same time, it makes you want to get up and do something. I don't want to say it's inspiring, but it makes you want to get up and fight back because of what they did to her.
Absolutely, and that means so much to me that I could introduce you to her story, because I really... there's a lot more to why I left my medical career and sort of the shambles as far as I was concerned that my life was in at the time. But Rachel, I credit her courage. Again, I never met her, but it was her example that sort of pulled me out of a very dark place in my own life. And for me to be able to share her story with other people and sort of introduce them to her, that makes my heart feel good. So I appreciate that. So because of Rachel, I went to go see my family, and after spending time with my family and seeing how they were suffering, I thought I had things hard, because my life was difficult, and but I had all the comforts I could ever ask for. Basic things like electricity and water, and I have my own car, and I can go places by myself. And this is their lives were completely changed by American policy, and I had a problem with that because their lives were changed for the worse. So I started telling my story and showing my family photos at that time to peace groups in Colorado. And just by word of mouth, someone would hear me at one venue and invite me to their church or community group. And it kind of just grew from there. So that was, I didn't have sort of a plan that I'm going to put medicine aside and I'm going to be an activist now. It just sort of evolved that way, and I feel really lucky to have had the opportunity to share my story and my family with so many people across the U.S. And in Europe, and then worldwide through the internet. And it, got me to connect with you here today. So thank you again for that.
Is there any time frame on when your book should be out?
Oh my gosh! If it should have been done a long time ago, but my latest goal is this year, and I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. The major obstacle has been that I'm not a writer, and it's been on the job training, but I'm making good progress, and I really feel like this is the last big contribution I can make for this stage of where we are in this country, where we are in the world, and it thrills me to no end. It gives me great reward to know that I've helped to open someone's eyes or encourage someone to take action. And this is just one more piece to try to inspire people to keep going, because it's easy to get discouraged, but but there is no holding back, and we get one shot at this life, and we should make it count and do the best we can for all the living things on the planet. So I'm hoping by the end of the year.
Awesome. So let's let's dive into the mess that is the Iraq that we've created, or we've allowed to be created in our name over the past 7 years, 8 years, and actually even longer than that. But it starts with the first Gulf War, with all the sanctions, and through that, I believe it was over 1 million people had died over 10 years or so, and they said, I think it was I know it was more than one generation, but we'll just say for right now, an entire generation of Iraqi individuals and their intelligence and just the things that they knew were completely wiped out. And that's why I know a lot of guys would come back and they'd be like, man, you know, those Iraqis, they are stupid. They just can't get out of their own way. And they don't understand that that's because this best and brightest of their culture and of their country were completely eradicated, just wiped out over the course of years through sanctions, assassinations, bombings, whatever the case may be. And all these people were taken out. And now the only thing that's left were the younger generations, and robbed of any good education because of the sanctions. And they didn't have money for, over the course of time, infrastructure and everything was breaking down. That's why it was so easy to go in there and do what we did the second time around. Yeah, they were a little fiercer fighters than there were in the first Gulf War, but that's also because people were more desperate. And then we ended up shipping in people later on, which we can get into. But Iraq is such a huge mess. We have allowed this war and these crimes against humanity to go on in our name. And I think the first step to getting through this and getting past this is we have to admit we were wrong to begin with. And that's the hardest thing I've noticed for people to do is accept that we were wrong about Iraq. What say you?
That was a very thorough and complete summary of basically our last 20 years of foreign policy, and I use the term loosely, with Iraq, which has been a very aggressive goal of destroying the country, and unfortunately, I think mission accomplished. As you described, and all of these issues we can find happening in our own backyard as well. I think there's a lot of concern today, and I would say it's valid concern with genetically modified foods, and that we don't know what effect that'll have on us. But if you speak to pediatricians, they'll tell you that nutrition is critical. Nutrition is very, very important for developing children. The development of all their organ systems, but also very importantly, their brains. And we deprived a generation of Iraqi children access to healthy nutrition. As you described, the sanctions that were originally imposed to push Iraq out of Kuwait were continued punitively after the first Gulf War, even though Iraq was no longer occupying Kuwait. Those sanctions continued officially until shock and awe started. And between 1990 and 1997, there were an estimated 1 million children malnourished in southern Iraq. And as you accurately said, during the whole period of sanctions, an estimated between 1.2 and 1.8 million Iraqis died. At least 500,000 were children. And that 500,000 figure was from 1996. Now that figure is what pushed the UN to pass the Oil for Food program and to get that started. But even if it had not been rife with corruption, it was a drop in the bucket for what Iraqis needed to feed themselves.
As it always is. I'm going to cut you off right there.
Sure.
Because we're coming up on the break. Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. More on the Iraq War, the corruption, the crimes against humanity, the health problems, This is a big issue. We need to discuss it. We need to own up to it. First step to getting through a problem and getting past a problem is admitting there is a problem. All right, we're going to break. Stay tuned. We will be right back. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back. And we got cut off by the break. Dahlia was getting into a really deep point, so I'll let her pick up right where we left off. Dahlia, you were connecting how Monsanto, the link between Monsanto here and the Monsanto in Iraq.
Right. So nutrition is very important for developing brains. And we see now I'm not going to go so far as to say, because I don't have all the evidence, that the government is manipulating our food for its own purposes. But we see high-level members of the administration in the Supreme Court, namely Clarence Thomas, and one of the new administrators at the Food and Drug Administration, have a strong history with the Monsanto Corporation. And Monsanto makes a lot of money from genetically modified foods. Well, after we invaded Iraq, Iraq became sort of the laboratory for these GMOs, genetically modified organisms. By that time in Iraq's history, which is, of course, thousands of years of history, they had established a seed bank that had over almost all the different types of wheat in the world, over 400 different types, and numerous other seeds as well. The seed bank was destroyed as part of the invasion. Whether it was purposeful or not, really irrelevant when the outcome is found. So this opened up the door for Monsanto and its genetically modified seeds. These are terminator seeds, which yield plants that don't give seeds, so you have to go back to the company to buy new seeds. And the long-term impact on the health of the planet and the people is not known. But this sort of genetically modified technology we don't know what the impact is, and Iraq basically became a laboratory for it. So we see how we've affected the nutrition of the Iraqi people, and it is very possible that this is the same sort of nutritional manipulation that we're seeing back here at home. And so this is, as you described, a generation that, because of sanctions, had inadequate development, inadequate nutrition, and the sanctions were even on an intellectual level, so that primarily led by the United States and Great Britain, journals, magazines, even medical journals and science magazines were blocked from going into Iraq, which paralyzed the country and left them trapped from moving forward. Then after the invasion, with the destruction of intellectuals and the targeting of academics for assassination, what you described is exactly right. Many of the intellectuals and doctors fled the country. Over 350 academics were murdered. And this had left Iraqis themselves, they called their healthcare system beheaded, because those who had the training and the experience were gone. And what they were left with were those in training. And having been in that position, that's extraordinarily difficult. I talked about my writing as on-the-job training, but when you're talking about trying to help people with their health needs, this is tremendously limiting and very stressful on those residents and the population. So it's not just we created regime change in Iraq. We totally smashed the state. We totally destroyed their society. And
they used to be like the top medical, I don't want to say experts, but I guess you could say they had the best medical facilities in all of the Middle East. And if I remember correctly, wasn't the first heart transplant in the Middle East performed in Iraq?
I'm going to have to look that one up. And thank you for teaching me. On the general idea, you are correct that it was known, Iraq's healthcare system was known as the jewel of the Arab world. And a lot of that came from, and this is, the political repression aside, there is no question about the brutality of Saddam Hussein's regime. But what the regime did as a secular socialist system was to nationalize Iraq's oil and put the profits from selling its oil into the infrastructure. So it built up a very strong healthcare system to the point where there was like a whole health tourism industry of people coming to Iraq to get their healthcare needs met. And in a time of very few years, this has all been destroyed. But it was, you're absolutely right. It used to be known as the jewel of the Arab world.
And it's just a shame to see what it is now, and to see these children suffering. Especially, we were talking off air before the show about the kids in Fallujah and the babies there with the DU. I guess you could say poisoning, for lack of a better term, because I don't even think poisoning is an adequate term for what's going on to these people. The ground, the water, everything. The buildings are just saturated with depleted uranium from all these rounds, because as soon as it hits something, it's in the air. You know, it's just like the rods at Fukushima. Once they blew. That was it. It's in the air. It's too late. You're done. And it's all over the place. And now the Middle East is this radioactive, contaminated garbage dump, for lack of a better term. And it's just, knowing this kills me, because not only is the Middle East rich in culture and dates back, 5,000, 6,000 years, the Babylon, the first civilizations in recorded history that date back there, which is interesting too, how they invaded Babylon, but that's another subject. It's just it's so horrible to see this. Like, I love architecture, I love art, I love history. History is like one of my favorite subjects, and to know what our military took part in doing and destroying. I mean, we've taken their artifacts. We blew the doors off the museum and stole artifacts that were thousands of years old that weren't ours to take. Like, it gets me when people don't want to admit that what we did was wrong. And like you said in one of your speeches, how dare any American, get pissed and try to vilify true justified anger at this. I would be mad too. How pissed off would America be if somebody rolled in here and invaded the country and kicked in the doors at the Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C., or at the Smithsonian, or went and took the Constitution or the copy of the Declaration of Independence, whether or not they're real or not, if they might be fakes just for display. But what happens if they went in and did that and they started wrecking our national treasures and stuff? Wouldn't you be angry? So
that's such a good analogy.
It makes me so mad, because I don't endorse attacking our military, but at the same time I understand, and most vets that come back from over there understand this, because they know, they've seen it. That how would you feel if you were, if you were in a country and your home was being occupied? If the Chinese, I always say this, if the Chinese invaded the United States, how would most of my listeners react? They would be running around attacking the Chinese soldiers, wouldn't they? Oh, well, gee, what does that look like? You know what I mean?
Exactly. And I let me tell you, I would be defending my family, and it wouldn't be because I loved Obama. Let me tell you that much.
Yeah, it wouldn't be about Obama. It would be about, this is my home. This is, your family is here, and where are you going to go? There is nowhere else to go, so you have to stand your ground. And people have to put themselves, like the Indians used to say, you should walk a mile in a man's moccasins before you try to judge him. That way you can at least try to understand. I'm not saying that it's good that they put IEDs and blow up roadside bombs and stuff. You know what? Our soldiers, our sailors, our airmen, and our Marines, they deserve way better than to even be put into that situation. We owe them more respect than to be sending them into some meat grinder for some douchebag corporate fat cats that get no bid contracts on things, and then they don't even it's just so frustrating. No war for the soldiers.
That's why so many soldiers and veterans in the past few years have begun to try to find their own voice. They've tried to balance it with with keeping their job, but they have, and there are a very courageous handful who have outright refused to follow such orders, because in the UCMJ you have an obligation to refuse unlawful orders. Now, when you're up against the military judicial system, you're probably not going to get a fair shake.
No, it's not that easy as one would think. Dahlia, I'm going to cut you off right there because we're going to break. Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. We'll be back in 3 minutes. Don't go anywhere. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. Final segment of the first hour, but we still have hour number 2. Just an amazing interview so far. And I'm going to have Dahlia back as a regular contributor, perhaps like once a month. And I'll give you,
awesome.
2 hours to even maybe we can even try to manage to get your own show or something here on the network if you wanted it, because I really think that your voice needs to be out there. People need to hear the truth. Look, you've helped wake up many people, I know. I mean, you helped there were certain aspects of things that you helped me, your speeches and the things that you talked about, and encouraged me to go research this stuff. And then I found out even further, oh my God. And it helped wake me up. And I know that in turn helped wake up thousands and thousands of people. And you yourself, even separate from me, I know you've woken up other neocons, like hardcore neocons. I know people that were all, years ago anti-Muslim, we must kill every one of them. And now they realize, because you helped bridge that gap. You helped, wake people up. So I think your work needs to be covered. I think your voice needs to be heard, because who knows who you could wake up, Dahlia? You could possibly wake up the next president of the United States. Who knows?
We gotta get to work. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I have puppies myself.
He's also very very upset about the state of the world today.
See, my dogs get upset too. They get vocal. It's okay.
But he's going to calm down now. To take it back to where we were in terms of people finding their voice, and I tell you, I was I wanted to be establishment as much as the next person for a long time, and I knew that I should open my mouth, but I stayed quiet because it was better for me. There are so many people out there. I made the direct connection with my own family members who had no voice under occupation. I believe that the training has a lot to do with it, but a lot of soldiers and Marines find themselves without a voice. And when they become trapped like that, for many, the only option becomes suicide. And there is a suicide epidemic today amongst veterans of all wars. But if you count all the attempts, there are over 100 attempts every day. And on average, 18 veterans commit suicide. Unfortunately, 18 are successful in their attempts every day. Now, if you are going overseas and you are building schools and hospitals, that doesn't make you want to come home and kill yourself. Something is going on. And these individuals are unable to find their voice and tell us what's happening. But there are enough other people out there. There's enough information available on the internet to find out what the real story is. And at this point, as the body bags grow, as the numbers grow, whether it's in the ones being shipped back home here to the U.S., or the dead in Iraq, the dead in Afghanistan, the dead in Libya, we're shaking our sabers at Syria and Iran. We have to look that this is our policy, our aggressive policy has become the norm, and we cannot get desensitized to that. And we have to continue to speak out and raise our voices so that this bloodshed stops.
I agree, because there's this culture of war now in this country where everybody is war. And that's all they want to do is attack things. And I mean, kids nowadays, there's an entire generation of children that don't know anything but war. They were born, at the beginning of the, perhaps right after 9/11. And since then, they growing up, all they've heard on the background on TV and radio was war in Afghanistan, war in Iraq, war in Afghanistan. The video games they grew up playing, Call of Duty, Battlefield, all these realistic video games that help desensitize them so that when they turn 18, they want to go join the Marine Corps and get killed. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with wanting to be a Marine or wanting to serve your country, but right now, our good men and women are being wasted for nothing. And I think it's utterly appalling, and it pisses me off that none of them have a voice. And people don't even want to listen to them, Dahlia. I see them get ignored. I've been ignored just because I'm a young vet. When I go through my health care with the VA, it took me years of fighting with them to get them to address anything about young veterans, and not just me. Thousands upon thousands upon thousands of other veterans had the same issue. Now they're a little more. They're a little more, let's say, expedient about things. Not too much, but to the point where I actually talked to a younger vet a couple of months ago, and he said, well, when I put in for my benefits, I had my response back in 90 days. The VA was so efficient. And I laughed because the kid was maybe 21 years old, and I realized that he wasn't even in when I started fighting for my benefits from the VA. You know, so there's an entire generation inside the military itself that doesn't even realize how lucky they are compared to the older generation of vets. I mean, not that they're lucky, but how the older generation, like the Vietnam guys, fought for them. Credit to a lot of the Vietnam veterans. They stood up in defense of these younger vets and said, when we came back, we had no help. You guys threw us away, and that's why so many of us committed suicide or in jail, are alcoholics or homeless on the street and drug addicts. And they started seeing it happening with the Iraq and Afghanistan veterans, and they didn't want the same path to continue. And credit to them, because they're a big factor in standing up and doing the same thing. I myself am trying to put together, I was going to do a thing where vets email me and let me, they spout off and I would read their emails on air, but I'd actually rather, I'm trying to, we're working on some technical stuff behind the scenes, but eventually I would like to try to make like a, perhaps even like a 1 hour show where, per week, where separate from mine, where I could get some vets on if they wanted to do it regularly or whatever, and let them field phone calls and stuff and emails that they get from other veterans and let them spout off in their own words and tell the world what they've seen. And just give them an open and free, uncensored platform. I mean, I'd have to talk to the owner of the network and everything else to see if he'd be down with it. But these are just ideas I've thrown around because I would love to give a platform to these guys and women, these men and women, to be able to speak their minds and tell the truth. I mean, you've got a chance to work with some of these individuals through doing your speeches. I mean, you know that not all these people are monsters, and even a lot of the ones that are quote unquote former monsters, I've seen a lot of them, break down and realize what they've done, and they're just completely destroyed on the inside. That's just as painful to see the damage that they did, right?
Absolutely. I mean, this is why, and so many, I think I think it's the number who come home and commit suicide outnumbers those who are killed in the actual war theater. But this is those individuals who cannot find their voice. And it's going to take, we need change on, sorry, I don't mean to quote the president, who was not about change at all, but we need fundamental alterations in so many aspects of our system. And by all means, I respect those who want to defend their country. But right now, the only ones defending their country in Iraq and Afghanistan are the Iraqis and the Afghans. If we have to get on a plane or a boat to travel thousands of miles to go defend convoys for Kellogg, Brown, and Root, then we're not defending our country. So be aware of what you're signing up for, because the military now is being used, as it has for many years. Smedley Butler said in 1933, I believe, war is a racket, and he was a muscle man for big business, and it's the same thing today. And we need we need those voices. I mean, the people, most of the people who enlist in the military, this is the working classes. We're destroying the next generation overseas, and we're destroying the next generation here as well. And enough is enough, and we passed enough a long time ago. So I appreciate your call to action, and I stand beside you in that call.
And I know there's a lot of other hosts that actually listen to my show. I have a lot of friends that are hosts, and on Sundays, especially the Sunday show, there's a lot of hosts that listen. So I'm going to put out a call to action now that they should also contact you, and I'll let you give out your email and stuff, because we have about 2 minutes before we're going to come to the top of the hour break. But I want everybody out there to call up Dahlia, or email her, rather, not call her up, email her, and set up interview dates with her and have her come on and talk about Iraq and anything else that she wants to talk about. Her husband is involved with an interesting organization. I'm going to set up having him on so he can promote his organization. It's about, helping, I guess, rebuild Fallujah and try to somewhat make amends for the destruction we brought there. We can get into that hour number 2. But seriously, you guys out there, I'm putting a call to action. Have her on, have her husband on, and get the message out. We are the alternative media. We are being held to a certain standard by the people out here. So, Dahlia, we have about 20 seconds. Go ahead and give out the email really quick where they can get in touch with you.
Sure. You can reach me at info@liberatethis.com, or you can find me on Facebook, or you can find me on YouTube, or you can Google me, info@liberatethis.com.
Awesome. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, stay right there. We're back in a few minutes with hour number 2. You don't want to miss it. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with hour number 2 here on today's edition of Down the Rabbit Hole. I am your host, Popeye, from federaljack.com. Today is March 11th, 2012, and I am honored to have as my guest Dr. Dahlia Wasfi. And we've been talking about Iraq. We've kind of covered the health conditions and things that are going on over there, which we're going to get into heavily second hour. And the last segment, we were talking about her husband's got a special. He's developed. I guess he's created it. He's part of one of the founding members of this organization. I'm going to let her give you the details because I don't want to slaughter the details here. But I urge you guys to check that out as well. It's about helping. I know the base goal of it is about helping fix what we did to that city back in Operation Phantom Fury. So, Dahlia, what exactly is this organization that your husband, I think he created it, right? And then go ahead and give the details and everything, a little background, and tell people how they can help out with it.
Sure. Thank you for the introduction to that. So my husband was a Marine in the second siege of Fallujah, which took place in November 2004. And because of his experiences before, during, and after, and recognizing what the impact is still today from the attacks on Fallujah, he set up the Justice for Fallujah Project. You can find it. The website is, I think it's justiceforfallujah.org, and it's on Facebook as well. And basically, the main goal of the project is to raise awareness for the tremendous health crisis that is in Fallujah today, which is made up primarily of a tremendous increase in the birth defects amongst the members of that city's population, and increase in cancers and other diseases that previously had not been seen in that city. The same pattern of birth defects and cancers were seen in southern Iraq after the first Gulf War. And they emerged again within 2 years after the second siege of Fallujah, both sieges, the April and November 2004 sieges. And the most likely cause of the birth defects and cancer elevated rates is our use of uranium weapons. In both scenarios, both in the first Gulf War in 1991, where southern Iraq was heavily bombarded, and again, the probable use of uranium in Fallujah. There are also newer weapons that may have been used, newer since the first Gulf War. But what they're seeing now is the last figure I know is that 1 in 3 babies are born with some deformity. This is an unbelievable incidence rate. And the incidence of childhood leukemias is now worse than what was seen in Hiroshima after we dropped the atomic bomb there. Hiroshima experienced a 17 times increase in the incidence of leukemia, and Fallujah, the city of Fallujah, experiences a 38 times increase. So these are most likely related to our weapons, and definitely more investigation needs to go towards that, but also the hospitals of Fallujah need a great amount of support in how to care for these children and these families. And this, unfortunately, can be seen in many of the major areas of bombardment in Iraq. The same issues are being experienced in Afghanistan, and actually because we used DU, or depleted uranium, in the assault in Kosovo in 1999, there are also elevated cancer rates in Europe. So this is something we have to look at, because if a correlation is established between our weapons and these health crises, this is blatant violation of international law. And it's also affecting returning soldiers. DU is the most likely cause of Gulf War syndrome, which was observed after the first Gulf War. And there are certain incidents of birth defects and multiple medical complaints in returning veterans today. The last estimate I saw, which admittedly is old, this is from 2006, 2007, is that 1/3 of returning veterans are seeking help from the VA medical system. So this is, you're talking about a population of young, healthy men predominantly. Why are they all getting so sick now? We have to look at what we're doing and the impact it's having the world over.
I agree wholeheartedly. And if I remember correctly, it is the Bush administration was the first administration to actually use the DU rounds, even though we had them. I believe the first Gulf War was the first one we used them in.
That's right, Bush won.
And then from then on out, every time we go anywhere, it's DU, DU, DU. And I remember when I was in, we talked about, oh yeah, DU rounds are great, they're armor piercing. Nobody has any clue. The people that serve and touch this stuff and are around it, they have no clue. There's a famous video from, I don't remember, I think it was a German, I know it was a German soldier, but I think it was a German film crew too. It wasn't mainstream news America, I can tell you that, but there was this German soldier they were cleaning up after the initial invasion force when we tore into Iraq in 2003. And he's standing by one of these Iraqi tanks, these old Russian T-72s, and it's all blown up. You can see it's blown to hell. And he's standing there in just a T-shirt and his BDUs, and he's in gloves, and he's, they're hooking things up, and they're loading up. I guess that was on a flatbed, if I remember correctly. But he's picking up the parts, and there's a guy next to him, and it was either a doctor or whoever. He's in a full radiation suit with a Geiger counter, and he's standing looking at this kid. And he's showing him the Geiger counter is just pinging off the scale. It's going, this guy's in full radiation gear. And he's looking at this kid wearing a T-shirt, his boots, gloves. And the soldier laughed at him and said, oh, there's no danger. They would have told us, and walked away. Like, you're just being an idiot, and walked away.
No, that's a little bit of denial, and certainly, there's a reason to be concerned, because the Pentagon also told its soldiers that Agent Orange was perfectly fine and wouldn't bring harm to anybody. This, of course, was a deforestation agent used heavily in Vietnam, bringing again cancers and birth defects to the people of Vietnam. and many cancers to those soldiers who were exposed to it. And I also want to point out that Agent Orange was another product of Monsanto. So these are the warning signs of who is guiding our policy, who has influence on public policy, and their past history of damage done. So the Pentagon has used this idea before of, oh, it's perfectly fine for you, you'll be fine. But they've been caught in lies before.
They've given service members plutonium, told them it was vitamins. That's why
all kinds of, yeah.
I've had the VA say, oh, we want to start you on a vitamin regimen. And I'm like, nope, I'll take my own, thanks. I'll go out and buy the liquid form. And they're like, you sure? And I'm like, oh, I'm more than sure. I only take what I need to take. If I don't trust, and it's not that I think everybody's nefarious. You just got to have somebody higher up to put something illicit into the chain. But I know that they did test back in the day. They tested plutonium on guys and told them that it was vitamins. They tested it on them and their families. They just the horrific things, the mind control experiments. I mean, it's just that they don't care. They really don't care. And if they don't care about our own troops, think about how little they care about the citizens of a foreign country that they're going to invade and take over. They could care less. You know, you just see how the little care they have for their own people, let alone a foreigner, which they would consider less than, crap. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back. All right, Doug, you're getting back into it with Fallujah and your husband's organization. He started this, I guess, basically to try to repair what we pretty much destroyed as a country over there, and what we laid waste to. Go ahead and get into the organization a little bit and what it's about, and how people can help out as much as they want, or do what they can, at least somewhat get involved, spread the word, whatever.
Sure. Well, I have a correct website now. It's thefallujahproject.org. And again, the main purpose is to raise awareness on what the city is going through, which is really sort of it's an example for the whole country of Iraq of the destruction that has that we have wrought there. Each year, we've now had 2 successful Remember Fallujah weeks, which have taken place during November, the dates of the second siege. And this past November, we had a French documentary maker. He's French-Iraqi, and he did a documentary on Fallujah called Fallujah, A Lost Generation, which is presenting the rise in the number of birth defects in Fallujah, and also trying to figure out what is the cause of those birth defects. And the arrows point towards American weapons. The other thing I wanted to say about it was that people might ask, well, we have pulled out of Iraq, so it's over now, and that's almost true that we pulled out of Iraq. But we've left at least 16,000 mercenaries and personnel who are armed and defending the embassy. So we have this military presence still there. Thousands of security contractors remain in Iraq. And the other aspect is that the CIA has their foothold in Iraq now, and they have for many years in Southeast Asia and in Latin America used organizations like U.S. Agency for International Development, or USAID, as a cover for their own covert operations. And this is continuing to go on in Iraq today to maintain our influence in that country. So Iraq, and even if we were completely out, I feel like if we really do want national security, we had better make up for what we've done in our name. And so our obligation to Iraq is ongoing. And as the atrocities continue in Afghanistan and Libya, which was NATO-led regime change, this is our mark is on all these places, and we have to take action. That's our obligation, because if we live in this nation and we get the benefits of living in this country, then we are responsible as well. And that's at least how I perceive it and what drives me to continue to try to raise awareness.
It's important for people to see what really happened. There's so many people that are so ignorant. I still hear idiots say to me, well, Iraq was involved in 9/11, and I look at them. I'm like, even if you believe the official account of 9/11, nowhere is Iraq connected to it in any way, shape, or form. They even admit that there's no connection. But there's a famous clip where a reporter asked Bush during one of the press briefings, and he says, where is there a connection to between Iraq and 9/11? And Bush says none. There is none. So the president himself has even admitted there is no connection. So people need to stop with that. Well, we're in Iraq because of 9/11. No, we're not. That's misinformation. Whoever told you that lied to you. And if you really believe that, then you are truly an ignorant human being, and it's very upsetting. And that's why I do my show, so I can enlighten the ignorant so they will no longer be ignorant. See, to be ignorant isn't insulting. It just means you just don't know. You're not wise to the facts, to break it down in layman's terms. But once you listen to my show and you hear people like Dahlia come on and tell you this is the reality of things, and I don't expect you just to believe her either. I expect you to take what you hear her and I talk about today and roll with it. Go check it out. Do some research. Wow. Instead of watching Dancing with the Stars, go out and research and see what we did to the city of Fallujah. Go read a book. I could read off a few books for you to read. They're written from a soldier's perspective, so they might kind of seem a little pro-military, but they were written by guys that fought the battles of Fallujah. And I'm going to tell you what, if you read them, they all have a common theme. In that battle, we weren't fighting the citizens of that city. So the citizens of that city, I mean, maybe one or two here or there, but mostly they're paying for future generations to come, hundreds of, if not thousands of years, because we were fighting quote unquote Chechnyan fighters, and there were other nationalities in there, but a lot of the fighters that they were running into were Chechnyans, and they had large caches of drugs, and that's why they, when there were reports if they would shoot a guy and they would hit him in the head and he would still be firing his weapon and coming at them, they'd have to mow the guy down, 50, 60 rounds. That's why you see a lot of this stuff on TV, like where they shot the guy in the street and they had to shoot him like 5 or 6 times. Finally, somebody popped him in the noodle and the guy went down. It's because all these guys a lot of these people were on. They found caches of drugs, and why were Chechnyans there? I thought Fallujah was a city of an insurgency. Why do we have Chechnyan terrorists there? Questions. People need to look at this stuff. Obviously, we weren't told the truth. And now these innocent people are paying for it. And it kills me when I hear new parents in Fallujah don't ask if it's a boy or a girl anymore. They ask if it's normal. That's the new question. Not, did I get a boy or did I get a girl, doctor? It's, is the baby normal, doctor? That's horrible. That's horrible.
Well, maybe you can give me the reference for because this... The idea of foreign fighters is, and this particular story of Chechnyan fighters, I'm not familiar with, and this is back from at least from the time period of the sieges.
Yeah, I have to get the books. They're on my bookshelf. In fact, I'll try to write the names down for you, and you can check them out. And I'll even a couple of them I sent out to one of my cousins who's a sergeant in the Army, he's a tanker. But I'll try to get the names and I'll write a list because a lot of these, not that they're trying to be truthful or anything. They were obviously written by soldiers, but when you read their accounts, you could see they say, we kept running upon machine gun nest upon machine gun nest, and they were Chechnyan fighters, not regular Iraqis. Well, that tells you something. So now it's even worse. That means that these poor people in this city we destroyed their city, and now they're being punished for this stuff they didn't even do.
Well, this is a new perspective to me. So that's why I'm interested in following.
Yeah, I'll definitely make sure I send you in fact, I'll try to even find the exact pages and stuff. I'll do a little research because it was a couple years since I read the books. But again, this is stuff that I read in books, ladies and gentlemen. Oh my God, new concept, reading a book. Isn't it amazing, Dahlia? Books.
A lost art.
Yeah, right? Everybody wants ebooks now. Everybody wants instant gratification. They want Facebook or Twitter. You know what? Put the stupid tablet down for 15 minutes and go read a book. You'd be surprised at the information you find. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get cut off by the break. Stay tuned. I still have another half hour with her. Don't go anywhere. More with Dr. Dahlia Wasfi when we come back in 3 minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back. I'm going to give you 4 names of books really quick and the titles, and you can check them out. I'll have to find exactly. It's in one of these books. I have to look through the 4 of them, but I'll give you 4 to check out really quick. And of course, they're written from a military perspective, so you might not like you might not like some of the things that they say, but you will get a firsthand impression of what was really going on the ground. The first one is titled Ambush Alley. Ambush Alley, and then the subtitle is The Most Extraordinary Battle of the Iraq War. But just type in Ambush Alley, and it's by a guy named Tim Pritchard, Pritchard. Second one is We Were One, Shoulder to Shoulder with the Marines Who Took Fallujah, by Patrick K. O'Donnell. We Were One. The third one is Fallujah with Honor by Gary Livingston. And he's actually got a couple books. I've read a couple of them. And the fourth one is My Men Are My Heroes, the Brad Casal story by, obviously, Brad Casal. So go check out those 4 books if you have time, or make the time to read them so that you can feel bad for the things that went on and stuff, but so you can at least understand from a more realistic perspective of things. It helps you see the fuller picture with everything that you know, maybe the conspiratorial end of it, and then now you know their view on things and their end of it. And that's one of those books. I can't remember exactly where. I'll have to look through there. But one of those books is where I found that little ditty about that they were coming upon a lot of machine gun nests manned by Chechnyan fighters, and they kept saying that they didn't understand it. So I hope you all, go ahead. Again, I teach you to run with it. I always tell you, take the information and go and run, check it out. So go do your research, go do your homework. And Dahlia, don't worry, I'll give you a more detailed list, and I'll try to find actually where it is for you, off air, in a few hours or whatever after the show. I'll email it to you. Terrific.
Yeah, there's a lot of my references for Fallujah. There's a couple of documentaries out there. One of them is from an American source called Deep Dish Productions, but another one was made by a Japanese documentarian, Toshikuni Doi, and the name of that video is Fallujah 2004, and they got into Fallujah right after the first siege in April 2004. So I'm not sure which siege that particular a Marine was referencing, but in the definitely in the first siege, you hear testimonies from the residents of the city of Fallujah saying we were the ones who fought to defend our city. Now that there were also an element of foreign fighters, but at least the picture they paint is that the majority were people defending their city.
Oh, I wouldn't doubt that there were people defending their city, but I think that and I don't want to say all of them, but I would say that some of those foreign fighters that drew attention to Fallujah were not original natives, and having even that, even if halfway true, where there was maybe 100 Chechnyan fighters, it's still questionable as to why there were Chechnyan fighters that these Marines found with drugs on them at machine gun positions, whatever. And I'm not trying to paint a conspiracy or anything. I would guarantee more than 50% of the people that were killed were probably trying to defend their city, because if I can guarantee you, if you came into my city, the people would try to defend it, and there would be civilians killed. But it's just, I know that the greater quote-unquote problem of the insurgency, where they labeled Fallujah to be this hotbed, and I'm not saying it wasn't, but I think a lot of it, I do, just knowing the CIA, it's almost like, and I don't want to get too conspiratorial on it, you know what I mean? I don't want to go too down that alleyway too much, but it's almost like a lot of the attention was drawn there, and that city took the brunt of this frustration. I mean, the Marines were upset because they'd lost people, and first of all, what kind of just to show you why war is insane. They stick the Marines on there, and then as soon as they take parts of the city and everything else, they have to give everything back. And then it becomes a bigger problem, and then they have to go in a second time.
Well, that was the big issue, is that basically the U.S. was losing too many people, and they did have to withdraw from Fallujah, and they had to turn the city over to the resistance fighters. So this was a huge victory for the resistance in Fallujah. And some of the thinking is that the November siege was payback for that. Because Fallujah was becoming an example of resistance throughout Iraq, and the resistance fighters were starting to connect and may have done quite a bit of damage to the American and British occupation a lot earlier. But this is that's information, and actually I'll defer that. Hopefully you'll have the chance to talk to my husband, because he was actually. It was his unit that was followed for the book Fallujah with Honor, so he can give you his.
I read that book actually. That's
yeah. His
I have
name,
that book.
His name is Ross Caputi, and his name is mentioned in there. But he can give his take on those events and what's written there.
Yeah, I would love to have him on so he could give his account. You know, I want the truth to come out, no matter what it is. You know, if there is no conspiracy, not that I'm saying there is one, but if it really is, most of if the propaganda, let's say, coming out of the Bush administration about Fallujah was correct, that's the way I'll put it, because that's where I was going with it. If it was kind of correct, then I want the truth about it. If it's not correct, then I want the truth about that as well. I don't want any, you know, I want the truth. I don't want. I'm not here to try to inflate one side or the other. I just want the truth to get out. So that would be awesome if he wants to come on. In fact, I'll give him his own 2-hour show. I'll give him the time to do his own 2-hour show. Well, we'll talk about that after the show, and we'll book him at the break. We'll finalize that and hammer it out, and we'll get him on, because that's important. I want him to get his viewpoint too. Nobody is learning the truth. The only thing they're being told is whatever the controlled media puts out. So nobody knows the truth about the casualties or what really went on or the guys that were there. And it's important that people know. Again, that's why I have those books. That's why I read them cover to cover, because I wanted to understand these guys' perspective. I mean, that's why they come home and kill themselves.
Exactly. And these are some of the pieces of information to take into account as each of us, myself and your listeners are forming opinions on what's going on. All of these elements are so critical.
Yeah, every little piece is critical. I mean, when it comes down to it, the reason why it's so critical and why it's one of the most important things that we could get done and handle and topic we could cover, even not so, I mean, the whole Iraq war itself, but just as a microcosm, Fallujah itself is a perfect example of what we've done to that whole country. We've completely destroyed things that were thousands of years old. There's videos of soldiers and Marines using minarets for gun practice, and I'm not saying that there wasn't people shooting at them from some of them. There was, clearly, but it's the whole concept of, first of all, we shouldn't have put the Marines in there to kind of, you should never have the Marines or the Army try to do any sort of policing action. They're not there to police. The Marines are good at one thing: closing in with the enemy and wiping it off the face of the planet. That's what their job is, and they're quite effective at it. So putting them in a situation where you have an urban environment and you have women and children and stuff, you have to expect that. And I'm not saying that that's an excuse for what happened, but you have to take into account, again, in understanding this whole thing, because the Iraq war is so huge and so vast, you have to understand everybody's perspective on it to get the truth. You know, people don't like to talk about this stuff, Dahlia. They get all... This is the stuff where I get people, even hardcore researchers, they're like, oh, Popeye, I don't... this kind of stuff makes me uncomfortable talking about what we did. I have a brother in the Marines, and I'm like, I'm not bashing anybody. I have the utmost respect for everybody that serves in uniform, but I'm just tired of seeing them be put into a meat grinder, and I'm tired of seeing innocent people all over the world blown to little bits. And none of us on either side. It's the poor of this country, like you said, Dahlia, going to kill the poor of other countries, and neither side is benefiting. The only people that are benefiting are these rich fat cats at the top. All right, we're going to get cut off. Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. Final segment coming up. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Final segment of today's episode of Down the Rabbit Hole. Just epic interview. Dahlia, thank you for coming on my show today. That's number one. I want to give you the time to go ahead and shamelessly plug your husband's organization, any website he's got, your website, your email, for any radio show hosts that listen, so that you guys can get her on. Hint, hint, hint. And anything else you want to plug. Go ahead.
Thank you. So again, my name is Dahlia Wasfi. It's been my pleasure to be on the show today. My website is www.liberatethis.com. You can find me on Facebook or YouTube, or just Google Dahlia, Dahlia, and Iraq, and you'll find my videos. And please stay tuned, everyone. I promise the book is coming, and I would love for you to read it. For my husband, his name is Ross Caputi, and you can do a Google search for him as well. He's on YouTube and Facebook, and his project the website is www.thefallujahproject.org, and this is to raise awareness for the suffering the impact that our invasion and occupation have had on Iraq, and specifically the city of Fallujah in Iraq. And I think that's all the plugging. There you go. He's working on a book too, but anyway, stay tuned.
Yeah, it's important to educate yourself about. Again, Fallujah is a great example of the damage that we have wrought upon that country, and the invasion the ground invasion in 2003. That was kind of like the icing on the cake. We laid the foundation with those sanctions. Because we just, we destroyed, and those bombings too. A lot of people don't realize that during the Clinton administration, we were still bombing Iraq.
Absolutely.
The whole 8 years that he was the president, we were bombing them. Who were we killing?
Right.
Who were we killing? Were we killing targeted individuals? I wonder. Why were we blowing up factories or laboratories and killing certain? Why were we blowing up seed banks? Why were we doing this? Why were we targeted with military precision certain individuals? Why? Maybe the people that were doing the killing were told that they were terrorists. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, why did they want these people dead? Well, look at the end result. Again, they wiped out education. They wiped out the literacy there. And then when our soldiers go over there, these soldiers have been dehumanized, playing video games, been taught that they're not humans. They had, Haji. That nickname is there to, it's like, if someone says chink, like when they were during the Vietnam War, it was to dehumanize the enemy so you could go shoot him up real easy and kill him because he's not human. He's just a insert label here. You know what I mean? And every 20 years the label changes and it goes from one thing to another. It's always an ism or an ist. And that whatever the case may be, whatever they come up with, the new boogeyman is. And Dahlia said in one of her speeches, actually more than one of her speeches, but we send the poor of this country to kill the poor of other countries. It's genocide, pure and simple, 110%. When you look at it and you take your goggles of false patriotism, not true patriotism, false patriotism. Because a real patriot would see what's going on to our men and women in the military, and they would stand up and stop it and say, no, no, unacceptable. I will not let you kill these men and women. They deserve more respect than that. I mean, that's like my driving force is they deserve they don't sign up. You get a couple bad seeds, but nobody signs up because they want, maybe one or two, but most people will say 98%, 99% don't sign up because they want to run around and cause chaos and mayhem. They think that they're doing the right thing. So the sacrifices they're willing to make, they deserve the respect of not being put in that situation and being forced to be put in a situation where you're on a street with a 12-year-old kid with an RPG and you have to shoot that kid or he's going to kill you and 5 of your buddies. Of course that's going to mentally scar somebody. And then you'll have different people, oh, well, you killed a kid. That's all semantics. Nobody looks at the bigger picture of he shouldn't have been there to begin with, and they deserve more respect than to be used as the world's police force or the world's janitorial force. That's not our job. They should all be brought home from every foreign base back here on our soil, and we protect our soil and our soil only, and then that's a good start. And then we can start to try to make amends and build the respect back with foreign countries. But that's a big first step. But the New World Order, this empire, they can't have that. Darth Vader and the rest of them, and the evil Sith Lord, they can't have that. You can't have peace. They want a world government, and they want this takeover. We got a few minutes left, Dahlia. What's your take on what's going on now with like Syria and Iran, for example? Do you see that there's a difference, or do you see what I see? Because I see that there is no difference in news coverage. It's like propaganda back in 2003. They took it out of the closet, blew the dust off of it, and they put the tapes back in and just changed Iraq to Iran.
It really is bizarre how similar it is. And as I said to you in the break, I'll quote Yogi Berra, it's deja vu all over again. And the thing is that this is the difference is that at the time it was a big deal to invade Afghanistan because it had been so long since we'd had such a major military operation like that. I think because I don't think Grenada and Panama really count as major invasions. These were tiny countries that posed no resistance to the might of the U.S. military. The last major aggression like this was Vietnam, and so invading Afghanistan that was made easier because we held Afghanistan responsible for 9/11, which actually the Afghan people had absolutely nothing to do with it, but that's another show. And invading Iraq was a big deal because a lot of people were not buying the lies of WMDs and ties to 9/11. But now, as we talked about earlier, it's becoming like aggression is becoming like the first choice of policy. And one of the reasons for that is that it makes a whole lot of money for a handful of people. And that's the real reason why we're in this state of unending war. That there are war profiteers, whether they're security contractors or weapons manufacturers or the oil companies. The U.S. military is the largest user of fossil fuels on the planet. And the list goes on and on and on. These individuals make a lot of money and they have ties to policymakers in Washington. So it's a very ugly cycle. What I see now is that we are preparing for aggression in Syria, where Syria is none of our business. Syria is very complicated. There's the local, I believe there's a legitimate resistance there, but we are sticking our nose in it because of the regional and global implications. Regional being Syria's ties with Iran and ties with Hezbollah and Lebanon. It gets very complicated, and I don't live there, so it's none of my business as far as I'm concerned. Global, you have Russia and China defending Syria, and now we have looks like opposition to our aggression in the region. But the Syrians have the right to determine their future, whether that be the current regime or a new one. We have absolutely no right to interfere with that in any way whatsoever. And while the saber rattling towards Iran continues, it's very important to look at who is driving a move to attack Iran. And that is our largest ally in that part of the world. That's Israel. Now, we send $3 billion a year of American tax dollars to Israel in military aid. And we do that in violation of our own laws, which say that we will not export military aid to a country that uses the aid for something other than self-defense. And Israel has aggressively attacked each one of its neighbors. It still occupies a part of Syria, the Golan Heights. It has occupied Egypt. It has invaded and occupied Lebanon. It maintains an occupation of territories of Palestine. And Israel has between 200 and 400 nuclear warheads. So the real concern about a nuclear power in that part of the world is Israel. And that's why all the other countries are seeking to defend themselves against Israel. We should cut our military aid to Israel. We need the money here at home, and we need to stop continuing aiding and abetting in illegal occupation in Palestine. Through this, we can improve our relationships with the rest of the world. But right now, our policies are unacceptable. They are in violation of our domestic and international law. And again, if we want homeland security, we need to stop denying it for people overseas.
Hear, hear. We're right at the end of the show, Dahlia. Thank you for coming on, but I couldn't have said it better myself.
Thank you so much for letting me preach and giving me the opportunity. I would love to come back.
You are welcome back anytime. Ladies and gentlemen, 2 hours goes by fast, as always. Make sure you stay tuned for Joe and Tim over on the Freedom Link Radio. They'll be up in a few minutes, so don't go anywhere. And after them, Ken will be on. So just leave Orion on for the next 4 hours. You'll have some good radio coming your way. All right, guys, I will see you again Wednesday, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm out.